I have a question for you. What country has attacked America and Iran at the same time? That nation is Iraq, the place where Shia militias, US troops, and even secret Israeli military bases all inhabit the same country. So, what is going on in Iraq? Is the country pro-America, pro-Iran? See, Iraq, because of its Shia population, its geographic location, and the history that it has with its eastern neighbor, Iran, occupies an important place in any discussion about the Middle East. See, here's the thing. Iraq lies on an axis. That axis starts at the border with Turkey and ends at the Gulf. And depending on who owns this axis, pressure can be placed against either Iran in the east or the Arabian Peninsula in the south. How do I know? Because that's exactly what Saddam Hussein did. Saddam took his massive army and waged a large war against Iran. Then, when things changed, he shifted his focus to the Arabian Peninsula and took over Kuwait. And after that story ended, the United States came in and took over Iraq. See, America's takeover was scary for Iran, because in case you haven't noticed, America and Iran don't exactly have the best relationship. So the Iranians, partially to protect their western border against American influence and prevent another war with Iraq, as happened with Saddam, began building ties with a certain group of people in Iraq, the Shia Muslims. This, naturally, had the Arabian Peninsula countries quite concerned, because besides the fact that they're Sunni, they weren't friends with Iran. With increased Iranian influence in Iraq, the pressure could be placed on them. The thing is though, the Shia dimension is more than just Iranian influence over Iraq. Iraq is genuinely a majority Shia nation. In fact, it's the largest Shia Arab country in the world. Most members of the Iraqi parliament are Shia Muslims, and their influence extends into the rest of the Iraqi government. So does that mean that Iraq is an ally of Iran? According to interviews conducted in this Foreign Affairs article, certain militia leaders in Iraq are motivated more by money than they are by ideology. And that may reflect the possibility that Iraqi Shias see themselves differently from Iran, and that they may be able to conduct a foreign policy more flexible than Iran, especially if it means working with America or the Gulf states. That point of influence is important because, historically speaking, under Saddam's rule, the Iraqi Shias lacked much of the hard power that they have today. And frankly speaking, there are a lot more economic opportunities when it comes to America than Iran. Iraq also depends on America for its economy. See, a very, very, very large portion of the economy is dependent on oil. The money gained from Iraqi oil doesn't go to Iraq directly. First, it goes to New York, and from New York, it gets transferred to Iraq. That means the United States can exercise influence over Iraq by simply withholding the money. That'd be tough for the nation, considering how important oil is to the economy. And that goes back to what I said, that Iraq, unlike Iran, can exercise a more flexible foreign policy. But how flexible is that foreign policy? I mean, American influence can only go so far. During the Iran war, for example, this news source reported that some Iraqi militias have claimed over 700 attacks against US targets in Iraq, with another report indicating over 500 attacks in the Kurdistan region, where America has a military base. These militias, of course, also targeted the Arab Gulf countries, including Saudi Arabia. These attacks were so important that, according to Reuters, Saudi Arabia thought it was necessary to respond and launch retaliatory strikes against these militias. Again, that's because of Iraq's geography. That's because of the axis that it lies on. As I said, depending on who owns that axis, great harm can be done to either the Iranians or the Arabs. And I guess, in this case, it was actually both. What do I mean? Well, as I said before, Iraq is on Iran's western flank, and as a result, it can be a source of trouble if dealt with poorly, as we saw during the Iran-Iraq War, which lasted for about 8 years. If we flip the perspective, however, and look at this from an American or Israeli perspective, then Iran's weakness becomes an American and Israeli advantage. See, one thing you should know about Iraq right now is that, politically speaking, things are a bit complex. The country, for example, is home to many Kurds. Why does that matter? Because just across the border from Iraq's Kurds, there are Iranian Kurds. Okay, but why does that matter? Because days after the Iran war began, reports surfaced that the Americans and the Israelis were sending military support to Kurdish forces in Iraq. And the sources said that the idea was for these Iraqi Kurds to meet up with the Iranian Kurds and enter Iranian territory. And the goal was probably to overstretch Iran's military capabilities and make its life much harder. So far, there's been no direct invasion, partially because an invasion of Iran would honestly be crazy. But nonetheless, the possibility of using Iraq as a base against Iran still exists. In fact, reports recently surfaced that the Israeli military secretly set up a base inside Iraqi territory. And because of the country's unique political situation, it is, unfortunately, a target for larger powers. Ultimately, the question of Iraqi militias probably something that the country of Iraq will have to wrestle with itself. It's hard to tell somebody with hard power to just give up that hard power, especially if the beneficiary is a foreign nation, be that nation America or Iran. Moreover, for the past 40 years, Iraq has seen waves of war pass through it. And I don't think I need to tell you that war is bad, not just as an event, but as a strategy. Most of the time, it doesn't work, especially if it's an offensive operation. Why doesn't it work? I discussed that in this video, so go check it out. You might like it. Until then, thank you for watching.